The moons of Kepler 186 cast strange shadows across Dr. Marcus Rivera's research station. 3 years into his xenobiology study of this distant system, he had documented countless species, but nothing like what his sensors detected tonight. The readings were off the charts. A massive heat signature moving with impossible precision through the crystalline forests. Marcus adjusted his atmospheric suit and checked his tranquilizer rifle one last time before stepping out into the alien twilight. The air shimmered with bioluminescent spores, turning the entire landscape into a ghostly spectacle. His boots crunched on the frost-covered ground as he followed the heat signature's trail. The creature had been circling his station for days, always keeping just outside his security perimeter. At first he thought it was hunting him, but its behavior didn't match any predator patterns he'd studied. It seemed to be waiting. A low rumble echoed through the crystalline trees, causing them to resonate in harmonic waves of sound. Marcus froze, his breath catching in his throat. There, in a clearing ahead, stood the most magnificent creature he'd ever seen. It was massive, easily twice the size of an earth tiger, with iridescent scales instead of fur. Its 6 eyes glowed with an inner fire, and patterns of light pulsed along its flanks like living circuits. But what truly stopped Marcus in his tracks wasn't the creature's fearsome appearance. It was what it was doing. The beast was curled protectively around a cluster of translucent eggs, each one larger than a human head. Inside the eggs, shadows moved with hypnotic grace. "My God," Marcus whispered, forgetting for a moment that he was supposed to maintain silence. The creature's head snapped up, all 6 eyes focusing on him with laser precision. But it didn't attack. Instead, it made a sound that sent shivers down his spine, a complex series of clicks and trills that his universal translator couldn't begin to process. Marcus slowly lowered his rifle, heart pounding. "You're not just protecting them, are you?" he said softly. "You're asking for help." The creature, which Marcus would later name Aurora, shifted slightly, revealing more of the eggs. Several were cracked, not from hatching, but from some kind of attack. And through the cracks, Marcus could see something extraordinary. The embryos inside were not of the same species as their protector. His mind raced with implications. This wasn't just a predator guarding its prey's eggs for later consumption, as some Earth species did. This was something else entirely, cross-species adoption, protective behavior that defied evolutionary logic. A distant explosion shattered the moment. Aurora's head whipped toward the sound, her bioluminescent patterns flaring with alarm. Marcus checked his handheld scanner and felt his blood run cold. Multiple ships were entering the atmosphere, not research vessels, but the distinctive signatures of corporate mining craft. The eggs. Of course, if his initial readings were correct, the embryos inside those eggs weren't just alien life forms. They were something unprecedented, something that could change everything. And now others had detected them too. Aurora made that strange trilling sound again, but this time Marcus didn't need a translator to understand. It was a sound of desperation, of pleading. She had sought him out specifically, had watched him long enough to know he wasn't a threat, and now she was asking for his help. Marcus knew what would happen if the corporate teams found Aurora and the eggs. Best case scenario, they'd all end up in some laboratory. Worst case, he'd seen how mining companies dealt with obstacles to their operations. He made his decision in a heartbeat, already pulling up the station's evacuation protocols on his wrist computer. "Okay," he said, meeting Aurora's fiery gaze. "Okay, but we need to move fast. I have a research shuttle hidden in the crystal caves. If we can get the eggs there." Aurora's response was immediate. She gently picked up one of the eggs in her massive jaws, demonstrating a delicacy that seemed impossible for a creature of her size. Marcus quickly set up his hover sled, designed for transporting geological samples. Together, they carefully loaded the remaining eggs. As they worked, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the trust being placed in him. Everything he'd learned about xenobiology, about evolution and natural selection, suggested this shouldn't be happening. Yet here he was, helping an apex predator from another world protect eggs from a third species entirely. The corporate ships were getting closer. Soon their scanners would pick up the unique energy signatures of the eggs. Marcus knew they had minutes at most before their position was discovered. As if sensing his thoughts, Aurora nudged him gently with her massive head, nearly knocking him over. "Right," he said, securing the last egg. "Let's go make history." What Marcus couldn't know, was that this moment would be remembered not just as a breakthrough in xenobiology, but as the first step toward unraveling a mystery that would change humanity's understanding of life itself. As they disappeared into the crystal forests, the 3 moons of Kepler 186 cast their light on the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would challenge everything Marcus thought he knew about life, intelligence, and the true meaning of family. The crystal caves pulsed with an eerie blue light as Marcus guided the hover sled through narrow passages. Aurora moved silently beside him, her massive form somehow navigating the tight spaces with fluid grace. The eggs in their care cast prismatic reflections on the cave walls, creating a dance of colors that would have been beautiful if they weren't running for their lives. Marcus's wrist computer chirped a warning. The corporate ships had landed. He recognized the signature of Nexus Industries, one of the most aggressive resource extraction companies in the sector. His mind flashed to the massacre on Europa, where Nexus had accidentally destroyed an entire ecosystem of ice-dwelling creatures to access rare minerals. "They're deploying ground teams," he muttered, checking the scanner. Aurora responded with a low rumble, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to darker hues. Over the past few hours, Marcus had begun to recognize certain patterns in her light displays. This one spelled danger, warning. They reached Marcus's hidden research shuttle, camouflaged against the crystalline walls. It wasn't large, but it would have to do. As they began loading the eggs, a sound stopped them both. A crack, followed by a musical chime that echoed through the caves. One of the eggs was hatching. No, not now," Marcus whispered, but nature wouldn't be denied. The egg's translucent shell split further, revealing something that took his breath away. The creature emerging was unlike anything in his extensive xenobiological database. Its body was serpentine but covered in what appeared to be living crystal. Wings unfurled, delicate, transparent things that caught the cave's light and split it into impossible colors. Aurora made a sound Marcus had never heard before, a gentle, melodic trill. The hatchling responded immediately, its wings vibrating to create a similar resonance. More eggs began to crack, responding to the sonic connection. Marcus's scanner blared. Multiple contacts, closing fast. He could hear the whine of Nexus hoverbikes echoing through the cave system. "Aurora, we have to." He stopped mid-sentence, transfixed by what he was seeing. Aurora had positioned herself over the hatching eggs, and her bioluminescent patterns were changing rapidly. The hatchlings were responding, their crystalline bodies beginning to pulse with similar patterns. It wasn't just communication, it was programming, genetic information being transmitted through light itself. "That's why you were protecting them," Marcus breathed. "You're not just their guardian, you're their teacher." A plasma bolt sizzled past his head, scorching the cave wall. Marcus spun to see 3 Nexus security officers in full combat gear advancing through the tunnel. "Step away from the specimens," the lead officer ordered. "This is now a Nexus Industries operation." Marcus raised his hand slowly, mind racing. Behind him, he could hear more eggs hatching, more crystalline wings unfurling. Aurora hadn't moved, continuing her light show with the hatchlings. She was finishing something vital, something that couldn't be interrupted. "These creatures are under Interstellar Conservation Act protection," Marcus said, trying to buy time. "I've already transmitted their genetic data to the Science Council." The lead officer laughed. "No, you haven't. We've been jamming all transmissions since we entered orbit. Now move, before we decide we don't need you alive to study these things." A high-pitched resonance filled the cave, building in intensity. The Nexus officers winced, their helmet systems struggling to compensate. Marcus felt it too, not just sound, but something deeper, as if reality itself was vibrating. The hatchlings had joined together in chorus, their crystalline bodies amplifying and focusing the sound. The cave walls began to crack, then shatter, crystal fragments hanging suspended in midair, as if gravity itself had gone haywire. Aurora's body blazed with light, patterns flowing faster than Marcus's eyes could follow. The hatchlings responded, their wings becoming prisms that bent not just light, but space. A sphere of distorted reality expanded from them, enveloping Marcus before he could move. The Nexus officers opened fire, but their plasma bolts curved impossibly around the distortion field. Marcus watched in awe as reality twisted, folded, and they were somewhere else. The crystal cave was gone, replaced by a vast chamber deep underground. Ancient machinery lined the walls, covered in the same crystalline growths as the hatchlings. Aurora stood calmly, her 6 eyes regarding Marcus with what he could have sworn was satisfaction. "You knew," he said, understanding dawning. "You knew about this place. The eggs, the hatchlings, they're not just animals, are they? They're keys to something bigger." Aurora's response was to lead him deeper into the chamber, the hatchlings floating beside them on their impossible wings. As they walked, Marcus's scientific mind began cataloging details. The architecture was like nothing he'd seen before, but the purpose was becoming clear. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a laboratory. A very, very old one. One of the hatchlings landed on his shoulder, its crystalline form surprisingly light. Its wings brushed his face, and in that touch, Marcus felt something extraordinary, a transfer of information, pure and direct. Images, concepts, understanding flowing into his mind. He saw the truth about Aurora's species, about the crystal-winged creatures, about why they needed each other. He saw the threat that was coming, not just Nexus Industries, but something far worse, something that had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting in the space between stars. The hatchling took flight again, rejoining its siblings in their aerial dance. Marcus looked at Aurora, who met his gaze steadily. "Okay," he said quietly. "Show me everything." The ancient laboratory hummed with awakening power as Marcus worked to decipher its secrets. His fingers flew across holographic interfaces that responded to his touch as if they'd been designed for human hands. Perhaps they had been. The crystal-winged hatchlings danced around him, their bodies resonating with the machinery in ways that defied conventional physics. Aurora stood guard at the chamber's entrance, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in synchronization with the facility's rising energy levels. Through their growing connection, Marcus could sense her urgency. They didn't have much time. "This can't be right," he muttered, staring at the data streaming across the holographic displays. The information being transferred into his mind through his contact with the hatchlings was overwhelming, but one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. These aren't just ruins. This is a quarantine facility. The biggest hatchling, the first to emerge from its egg, landed on the control panel before him. Its crystalline wings cast rainbow patterns across Marcus's face as it transmitted another burst of information directly into his consciousness. The images made him stagger. He saw them, the Void Heralds, as the facility's creators had named them, ancient beings that drifted between dimensions, consuming entire realities. They had come to this galaxy once before, millions of years ago. The only thing that had stopped them was the combined effort of multiple civilizations, including Aurora's ancestors and the mysterious crystal beings whose children now floated before him. The facility wasn't just a laboratory, it was a warning system, and it was screaming. A distant explosion rocked the chamber. Aurora's head snapped toward the sound, her patterns shifting to alert mode. The Nexus teams had found them. How long? Marcus asked the hatchling, knowing it would understand. Another burst of information flooded his mind. His blood ran cold. 3 days. They'll be here in 3 days. The chamber's holographic displays shifted, showing the space around Kepler 186f. Dark rifts were forming, tears in the fabric of reality. The void heralds were waking up, drawn by the very energy emissions from Nexus's mining operations that had led them to this moon. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. In their blind rush to exploit this world's resources, Nexus had triggered the very warning system designed to prevent catastrophe. But they weren't the only threat anymore. Another explosion, closer this time. Aurora growled, the sound reverberating through the ancient chambers. The hatchlings responded, their crystalline forms glowing brighter, more intense. Marcus's mind raced through the information he'd received. The crystal-winged creatures weren't just keys to the facility. They were living weapons, designed to seal dimensional rifts. But they were too young, too few. They needed time to mature, to reach their full power. Time they didn't have. "We need to get to my shuttle," Marcus said, already moving to gather what portable technology he could. "If we can broadcast a warning." A plasma bolt sizzled through the air, missing him by inches. Nexus security forces had breached the chamber. Their tactical armor was scratched and dented from the journey through the shattered crystal caves, but their weapons were very much functional. "Hold it right there, Doctor." Commander Lisa Chen of Nexus Security stepped forward, her helmet retracting to reveal a face hardened by years of corporate warfare. "Step away from the alien tech. This is now a Nexus Industries operation." "You don't understand," Marcus tried to explain, even as Aurora moved to place herself between the security team and the hatchlings. "There's something coming. Something worse than anything." "Save it," Chen cut him off. "We've seen the energy readings. Whatever weapon system you've activated down here, it belongs to Nexus now. Corporate headquarters has already dispatched a collection fleet." The hatchlings began to sing, their crystalline bodies vibrating in harmony. The sound made the Nexus troops wince, their tactical systems struggling to compensate. But Marcus and Aurora had heard this song before. Reality bent. The security team opened fire, but their plasma bolts curved impossibly around the distortion field generated by the hatchlings. Aurora roared, the sound mixing with the crystalline song to create something new, a frequency that shattered the troops' helmet visors. In the chaos, Marcus grabbed what he could from the ancient consoles. Data crystals, control modules, anything that might help them prepare for what was coming. The hatchlings swirled around him, their song reaching a crescendo. Chen, her face bleeding from her shattered visor, raised her weapon one last time. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," she snarled. Marcus met her gaze steadily. "No, Commander, you don't." The distortion field expanded, enveloping Marcus, Aurora, and the hatchlings. The last thing he saw before reality shifted was Chen's face contorting in fury as her prize slipped away. They emerged in a different part of the cave system, but Marcus knew they couldn't stay. The hatchlings were already weakening from the effort of the teleport, their glow dimming. Aurora nuzzled them gently, transmitting more energy patterns through her bioluminescence. "The shuttle's this way," Marcus said, checking his scanner. "But even if we get off this moon, where can we go?" "The Void Heralds will follow the rifts here first, but they won't stop there. And Nexus is calling in reinforcements." One of the hatchlings landed on his shoulder, sharing one last vision. Marcus saw another facility, larger than this one, hidden in a place Nexus would never think to look. A place where the hatchlings could grow, mature, reach their full potential. "Earth," he whispered. "You want us to go to Earth." Aurora's patterns pulsed in confirmation. Of course, what better place to hide than the one world every major corporation considered too heavily regulated to exploit? Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of worlds settling onto his shoulders. They had 3 days to reach Earth, prepare its defenses, and find a way to stop an ancient horror from consuming all of reality. "Well," he said to his unlikely family, "let's not waste any time." Marcus's research shuttle wasn't designed for long-distance space travel, let alone interstellar jumps with multiple passengers. Yet here they were, Aurora's massive form somehow curled into the cargo hold, the crystal-winged hatchlings nested in a makeshift containment field powered by salvage technology from the ancient facility. "Hold on," he warned as they broke Kepler 186's atmosphere. The shuttle shuddered violently, straining against forces it was never meant to endure. On his tactical display, multiple Nexus vessels converged on their position. A warning klaxon blared. "Hull integrity at 64%. The ship's AI announced with artificial calm. "Incoming weapons lock detected." One of the hatchlings detached itself from the group and flew to the shuttle's power core. Its crystalline body began to pulse with familiar patterns, interfacing with the ship's systems in ways that should have been impossible. Suddenly, the engine output tripled. "That's not supposed to happen," Marcus muttered, watching in amazement as his modest research vessel began outpacing Nexus's military-grade ships. Aurora made a sound that could almost have been laughter. But their problems were far from over. The dimensional rifts were spreading faster than predicted, tears in spacetime appearing like cracks in glass. Through them, Marcus caught glimpses of something vast and dark, something that defied description. The Void Heralds were coming. "We need a way to mask our energy signature," he said, more to himself than his companions. "The rifts are tracking high-energy sources. At this rate, they'll follow us straight to—" He stopped mid-sentence as Aurora pressed her massive head against the cockpit wall. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted into a complex sequence he'd never seen before. The hatchlings responded immediately, their crystalline bodies resonating in harmony. The ship's sensors went crazy. According to every reading, they no longer existed. "You've been holding out on me," Marcus said with a hint of admiration. Through their strengthening mental connection, he understood. Aurora's species had evolved to hide from the Void Heralds during their first invasion. They could bend light, energy, even reality itself around them. But the effort was clearly taxing. Aurora's patterns were dimming, and the hatchling's glow had weakened significantly. They couldn't maintain this camouflage forever. A transmission crackled through the ship's comm system, breaking through even their energy masking. "Dr. Rivera." Commander Chen's voice was cold as space itself. "Did you really think we wouldn't have a backup plan?" Marcus's tactical display lit up with new contacts, dozens of them, emerging from hyperspace. Nexus had stationed a fleet along the route to Earth, guessing their destination. "The board is very interested in your new friends," Chen continued, "especially after what our sensors recorded in that facility. Dimensional manipulation, reality-bending capabilities. Do you have any idea what technology like that is worth? Do you have any idea what's coming?" Marcus shot back, frantically plotting alternative routes. "Check your long-range scans, Commander. Those rifts aren't just anomalies. They're wounds in space-time, and something is clawing its way through them. All the more reason to secure these assets before." Her transmission cut off abruptly as new alarms screamed to life. One of the rifts had appeared directly in the path of a Nexus vessel. Marcus watched in horror as something reached through, something that seemed to be made of living darkness, of anti-light that consumed everything it touched. The Nexus ship didn't even have time to scream. It simply ceased to exist, along with a sphere of space nearly a kilometer wide. Silence filled the comm channels. Then chaos erupted as the Nexus fleet broke formation, their military discipline shattering in the face of something their weapons couldn't hurt, their shields couldn't stop. The hatchlings huddled closer together, their song taking on a mournful tone. Through their shared connection, Marcus felt their sorrow, not just for the lost lives, but for what was to come. This was only the beginning. "New course," he announced, making a decision. "We can't lead them to Earth. Not directly." He input coordinates for a system he'd studied years ago, one that held particular significance in his research. "If we're going to have any chance of stopping the Void Heralds, we need to understand how they were defeated before. All of it." Aurora's patterns pulsed with approval. She understood. They were heading to the ruins of Epsilon Eridani, where Marcus had first discovered evidence of the ancient civilizations that had once united against this threat. "Commander," he broadcast on all frequencies, "if you're still alive out there, run. Get back to Earth. Warn them. You've seen what we're dealing with now. The next emergence point will be larger. They're not just breaking through, they're shattering the barriers between dimensions." He didn't wait for a response, engaging the modified engines. The hatchling merged with the power core, pulsed brighter, and space itself seemed to bend around them. They shot away from the chaos, leaving behind the remnants of the Nexus fleet and the growing rifts that spelled doom for all reality. But as they traveled, Marcus noticed something troubling. The hatchlings' crystalline bodies were changing, growing more complex, more intricate. They were evolving faster than they should, forced to mature by the proximity of the threat they were created to fight. And through his connection with them, he began to understand the terrible price of their power. The ancient civilizations hadn't just created weapons, they had engineered living keys to lock the Void Heralds away. Keys that required sacrifice to turn. Aurora knew. She had always known. That's why she had sought him out, why she had trusted him. Because what was coming would require not just strength or technology, but something harder, an impossible choice. The kind of choice that could save everything or doom it all. The ruins of Epsilon Eridani stretched before them like the bones of a fallen giant. Ancient space stations and megastructures, shattered eons ago, formed a maze of debris through which Marcus carefully navigated their ship. The crystal-winged creatures had grown dramatically during their journey, their bodies now pulsing with power that made the shuttle's instruments flicker wildly. Aurora hadn't moved from her vigil in the cargo hold, her bioluminescent patterns maintaining a constant stream of information to her adopted children. Through their strengthened mental link, Marcus understood she was preparing them for what was to come. The knowledge broke his heart. "There," he said, spotting what they'd come for. A structure larger than the others, relatively intact, its surface covered in familiar crystalline formations, the archive. As they docked, his screens lit up with multiple warnings. The dimensional rifts were spreading faster now, appearing at an exponential rate. The Void Heralds were no longer simply breaking through. They were merging realities, converting space itself into something hostile to all known life. "We have less than 6 hours," he announced, reading the data. "After that, the conversion will be irreversible." They made their way through the ancient structure, the crystal-winged creatures lighting their path with bodies that now shone like captured stars. The archive responded to their presence, systems dormant for millions of years humming to life. What they found confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The great alliance of civilizations hadn't just fought the Void Heralds. They had discovered that the only way to seal the rifts was through sacrifice. The crystal-winged creatures were designed to be living keys, but turning those keys required a consciousness to guide them, to willingly give up its existence to power the dimensional locks. "That's why you chose me," Marcus said quietly to Aurora. "Not just to protect them, but because you knew they would need a pilot." Aurora's patterns shifted in a way he'd never seen before. Sorrow, acknowledgement, and something deeper. Through their connection, he felt her response. She had chosen him because he had proven himself capable of understanding, of caring for life different from his own, because he could make the choice that needed to be made. The archive's central chamber activated, revealing a crystalline structure that mirrored the patterns of the now mature creatures. A control interface, but one that required more than simple operation. It required merger, dissolution, sacrifice. A transmission cut through their moment of understanding. Dr. Rivera. Commander Chen's voice, but different now. Shaken, desperate. "Our fleet, Earth's orbital defenses, nothing works against them. The rifts are appearing everywhere. Please, if you can do something." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of billions of lives across countless realities. When he opened them, he had made his decision. But Aurora moved faster than he could react. Her massive form interposed itself between him and the crystalline interface, her patterns blazing with an intensity that almost blinded him. "No," he protested, understanding her intent. "You can't. They need you. I'm the logical choice. I'm." The crystal-winged creatures surrounded them both, their song rising to a crescendo that shook the archive itself. Through their combined connection, Aurora shared her final gift: understanding. She showed him why it had to be her. Her species had evolved specifically to combat the Void Heralds. Her consciousness, merged with the living keys she had protected and nurtured, would form a lock strong enough to seal the rifts permanently. But more importantly, the crystal-winged creatures needed him, needed his humanity, his capacity for empathy and understanding, to guide them in the new universe that would emerge. "They're your children now," she communicated, her patterns forming words in his mind. "Teach them well." Before he could protest further, Aurora pressed her forehead against his one last time. In that touch was everything: gratitude, trust, and a fierce, protective love that transcended species. Then she turned and merged with the crystalline interface. Light exploded from the archive, rippling out through space itself. The crystal-winged creatures added their power to Aurora's sacrifice, their bodies becoming conduits for something that existed beyond normal physics. Marcus watched through tears as reality itself began to heal, the rifts sealing with aurora-like displays of light and energy. The Void Heralds screamed across dimensions as they were forced back, sealed away by a lock forged from love and sacrifice. Where the rifts had been, new patterns formed in space, crystalline structures that pulsed with familiar bioluminescent patterns, eternal guardians against any future incursions. Hours later, as Earth's ships arrived to investigate the miraculous salvation of all reality, they found something unprecedented. A human scientist, surrounded by creatures of living crystal, their bodies echoing with patterns of light that told a story of sacrifice, transformation, and hope. The crystal-winged creatures, now fully mature, settled around Marcus like a family reunited. Through their connection, he felt Aurora's essence living on in the very fabric of space-time, woven into the barriers that would forever protect existence itself. He had started this journey seeking to understand alien life. He ended it understanding something far more important: that love, sacrifice, and family could transcend not just species, but reality itself. As the crystal-winged creatures sang their songs to the stars, their light reflecting patterns that would forever remind him of Aurora, Marcus began the work of bridging worlds. There would be questions, investigations, demands from corporations and governments. But he had a more important task: keeping alive the memory of a being who had given everything to protect not just her adopted children, but all of existence. And in the depths of space, in the crystalline barriers between dimensions, patterns of light danced in eternal vigilance, a mother's love protecting all of reality.